father of 4 young children, and I recently asked my home group to pray for me for patience because I was struggling with being patient towards all of them. And one of my friends, when I asked that, kind of got a smile on his face and said, "Now you really are serious. You want for us to pray that God gives you patience." And it's kind of a joke in Christian circles that you don't want to ask for patience because God rarely reaches out of heaven and zaps you and makes you a patient person. Instead, what he does is he allows circumstances into your life. And then he gives us the ability to respond. And if we'll respond in the right way to those life circumstances, then we actually grow in patience. James 1, 2, and 3 talks about this. And it's a little crazy when you first read it. So let me read just the first part. James 1, 2. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. What? Consider it pure joy when trials are happening? That is a supernatural perspective to be able to just consider it joyful when bad things happening. And here's why. Read in verse 3. Because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. We should rejoice when we face trials because that's God's curriculum to help us act and love like Jesus did. And his ultimate goal really is to make us like him. Let's read this verse together in 1 John 3, 2. Dear friends, now we are children of God, and what we will be has not yet been made known. But we know that when Christ appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. See, that's what God wants to do, and he has a curriculum for all of us to turn us into Jesus and to help us live and love like Jesus did. And that's why 1 Corinthians 13:4 says this, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, and it is not proud. You see, patience is the attitude of love, and kindness is the actions of love. See, God provides the circumstances, and it's our job to provide the response. So there's 3 keys for us to have the right response when we have these circumstances happen in our lives. The first is that we need to keep the big picture in mind. And let's read a verse together from Romans 5, 3b and 4. We also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope. In my family, we have different chores that all the children do, and it's my job as a parent to train my children to grow up so that they would know the value of hard work. And if you went and asked my 7-year-old and said, do you enjoy these circumstances that your father makes you do when it comes to chores, she would say she doesn't enjoy them. But what's interesting is my older daughter has been doing chores for a while. And she knows the bigger picture that after she does the chores, she gets a reward at the end. And my younger daughter doesn't really have that same experience. So what that means to me as the parent is my older daughter is much more usable to me because when these circumstances of life hit, when these chores happen, she has the perseverance and the patience to endure it, to get to the other side. And my younger daughter doesn't have that. And so my older daughter is more usable to me. And I think that's what God the Father in heaven is like with us. He wants to grow our level of patience so that when these circumstances in life happen, we're able to still be usable to him because we have the kind of love that he had. The second key to having the right response when circumstances happen is to be looking to the reward. See, Revelation 22:12 says that when Jesus comes back, he's bringing his reward with him. And that means that God is going to reward us for all the things that we have done. And I just know that God sees everything. And so just like my daughter, when she's doing her chores, if she knows at the end of those chores, she's going to get the reward, it's the same way with our Father in heaven. For all those times when we persevere and have patience, God sees that, and we're going to have a reward someday. The third key is we need to depend on God's strength. And let's read this verse together in Colossians 1:11. Being strengthened with all power according to his glorious might, so that you may have great endurance and patience. And God is offering to us the strength to endure and to be patient through any circumstance. And he will come through when we lean on him. So patience is a loving attitude, and kindness is loving actions. And Jesus tells a very famous story called the Good Samaritan. And in this story, you have a man walking between 2 cities. And as he walks along the road, he's robbed by a bunch of robbers, and they beat him and steal all his clothes and leave him by the side of the road for dead. Now, in this story, the next man to come along the road is a priest, who we would think of in our day as like a pastor. And so a pastor walks along and sees this man, and for some reason, we don't know the reason, he walks along the other side and doesn't help. Now, it could be that he was afraid for his life, could be all sorts of different reasons, but whatever reason, he didn't help the man. But later on in the story, a Levite comes along, and in our today's world, that might be kind of like an elder. And so an elder of our church, he'd be walking on the road, and he sees this man, maybe dead, maybe alive, we can't tell, but he just walks right on by and keeps going. And then Jesus in his story says a Samaritan comes along, and a Samaritan was a person from another ethnic group, and so we might think of it in our world like an Iranian. So an Iranian man walks along, and what is he going to do? And in the story that Jesus tells, the man stops and checks on the man and bandages him. And, people back then didn't carry first aid kits in their pockets. And so where did he get these bandages from? Well, he probably took his shirt and just started ripping it up into shreds and bandaging the man with his own clothes. And he put medicine on his wounds and put the sick and hurting man, he put him on his donkey, and he took him to shelter. And then when he got to that shelter place, he paid for the man to stay there as long as it would take to get him back where he was healthy again. And then Jesus finishes the story saying, which of these people loved their neighbor? And so it was the man who showed kindness, the man who showed loving actions. It was the Samaritan in the story who actually loved the way Jesus loved. I think there's 5 keys that help us to be kind. The first one, the key to being kind, is we have to start seeing needs. And this is just simply us noticing. And a lot of times I think we're just too busy. Our lives are too busy. We have too much going on in our brain. And maybe, I'm on my phone too much, or the headphones, or my tunnel vision, or, singing to a song. And I love all those things. But I think if we were to slow down and just look around our world and start asking people, hey, how are you doing? Or just noticing when people need help, I think we would start seeing the needs around us. And 1 Corinthians 10:24 says this, no one should seek their own good, but the good of others. The second key to having kindness is we need to sympathize with people's pain. And notice what Jesus says in the story of Luke 10:33 with the Samaritan. But the Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. You see, this Samaritan man, he had compassion in his heart. He sympathized with the predicament that this robbed man had. And he said, man, if I was in that robbed man's shoes, I would want someone to help me. And so he sympathized with the pain of the man who had the real need. The third key is that when we see a need and we have compassion, we should help when we can. Proverbs 3:27-28 says something really helpful. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due, when it is in your power to act. Do not say to your neighbor, come back tomorrow and I'll give it to you, when you already have it with you. You see, a lot of times we want to do something. We have compassion for a need, but then we don't ever turn that compassion into action. And what we need to do is help when we can, and I would just say help immediately. If you hear someone's in need, go right then. Don't put it off till tomorrow. Don't put it off till next week. Help right then. Say, let's see what we can do to help. Because we can do a lot of things. We can take a meal to somebody when we know they're sick. We can help financially if we've stewarded our resources and God has blessed us. We can help with just a word of encouragement. So if you're thinking, man, I don't know what I have to offer, you have things to offer. You can help in many ways. And so let's not put it off till tomorrow if we can help today. The fourth key to being kind is we have to be willing to risk. You see, the Samaritan, when he stopped to help that man and bandage up his wounds, he didn't know if the robbers were gone. He was risking his own life and safety to help that man in need. And a lot of times for us to help is going to require some amount of risk. And so I think a key to kindness is we have to be willing to risk something for the sake of love. And the fifth key to being kind is spend whatever it takes. And this is just what we saw in the story where the Samaritan, he took the sick man, the beaten man to this place, and he said, whatever it takes to get this man back healthy again, I'll spend it. I'm good for it. I want to give generously. And there's some times where for us to be kind with our actions, we have to spend our own resources to get there. So those are the keys to kindness. And, I sometimes think love sounds really simple until we start digging into it and realize that love requires patience and kindness. And the kind of love that Jesus loved with is not this surface love. It's a deep love. And we need to live love like Jesus did.